Midnight in London. The glow of a single laptop screen cuts through the dark like a blade. Lines of code scroll across a black terminal window. Steady, silent, except for the rhythmic tapping of a keyboard. A teenager sits cross-legged on his bed, hoodie pulled over his head, eyes locked to the screen. He's not in a government bunker, not part of some elite spy program. He's in his parents' house. And tonight, he's inside Uber. Thousands of miles away, in San Francisco, Slack channels explode. Did we just get hacked? One engineer types. Then a message appears in the company chat, not from a colleague, but from the intruder himself. Hi, I'm a hacker and Uber has suffered a data breach. Laughter breaks out at first. No one believes it. Then screenshots start circulating, internal dashboards, security logs, confidential emails. Within minutes, Uber's core systems go into lockdown. Executives are woken in the middle of the night. PR teams scramble. The world's biggest rideshare company has just been breached by a teenager. But who was he? How did a kid with no insider access break into one of Silicon Valley's giants? And more disturbingly, why did he do it for fun? Before the breach that shook Silicon Valley, there was just a kid. A 17-year-old from Oxfordshire, England, with a laptop, an internet connection, and an ego that outgrew his bedroom. He wasn't a seasoned hacker. He wasn't after money, not really. He wanted attention, respect, chaos. Online, he went by the alias Teapot, a member, or at least an admirer, of a loose collective of young digital tricksters called Lapsus. The group wasn't like your typical cybercrime syndicate. There were no masks, no shadowy figureheads in basements. They were loud, cocky. They bragged on Telegram about their exploits, posting screenshots of stolen data and taunting billion-dollar companies like it was a game. Their victims read like a Fortune 500 Hall of Fame: Microsoft, Nvidia, Samsung, Okta, Rockstar Games. But it was Uber, in September 2022, that would make Teapot a legend. The story didn't begin with a firewall or some Hollywood-style backdoor. It started with something much simpler, a single password. Uber, like many tech companies, relied on third-party contractors for parts of its internal infrastructure. One of those contractors had an old VPN account protected only by a username, password, and multi-factor authentication, MFA prompts. When Teapot got hold of those credentials, likely purchased or phished, he didn't brute force his way in. He annoyed his way in. By repeatedly spamming the contractor with MFA login requests, he triggered something called MFA fatigue. The target, tired, distracted, or simply wanting the notifications to stop, finally clicked approve. And just like that, the teen was inside Uber's internal network. He moved fast, mapped the system, found administrator credentials left unprotected, accessed Slack, read internal emails, and then, in one audacious move, announced his presence directly to Uber employees. He wasn't subtle. He wanted them to know. "I am a hacker," he wrote in company chat. "You've been breached." No data was wiped, no ransom was demanded, no users were directly harmed. But for Uber, the damage was existential, a blow to reputation, investor confidence, and corporate pride. Within hours, the hacker had access to internal dashboards, vulnerability reports, and cloud systems, yet seemed more interested in the thrill than the profit. Screenshots leaked online. News outlets exploded with headlines. Teen hacker breaches Uber's systems for fun. But while the world laughed at the audacity, security experts didn't. Because what this kid had done revealed something terrifying. Even the most advanced systems can crumble under human weakness. The 15th of September 2022, the night Uber's digital heart skipped a beat. At 9:25 p.m. Pacific Time, security analysts at the company's headquarters in San Francisco began noticing strange logins. Internal dashboards were accessed from an unfamiliar IP. Files that hadn't been opened in months were suddenly being browsed. Then came the message that turned confusion into panic, a new post in the company Slack channel. "I am a hacker. Uber has suffered a data breach." At first, engineers thought it was a joke, someone trolling. But when screenshots started to circulate of AWS credentials, Google Workspace admin panels, and source code repositories, the laughter stopped. Uber's network access was immediately disabled. Employees were locked out. Inside the company's incident response room, The tension was electric. Monitors flickered with system logs. Phone lines buzzed between the San Francisco office, corporate security teams in New York, and law enforcement contacts in Washington, D.C. Someone said quietly, "He's in everything." The intruder had mapped their systems with surgical precision, yet his tone online was almost childish. He bragged on Slack, joked with employees, dropped emojis in chat threads. He wasn't after Bitcoin or blackmail. He was after recognition. Within hours, screenshots of the hack began appearing on Twitter and Telegram. Cybersecurity researchers confirmed what Uber already feared. The attacker had full administrative access. The story spread like wildfire. CNN, BBC, Reuters. Everyone was talking about the Uber hacker. How could a teenager outsmart a corporation with billions in cybersecurity investment? The answer was humiliatingly simple: trust. The hacker hadn't broken through firewalls or bypassed 0 days. He had simply convinced someone to press accept. That tiny act of human error, amplified through interconnected systems, had opened the floodgates. By morning, Uber's stock was sliding. PR teams issued statements about containment, insisting no sensitive customer data had been exposed. But the headlines told a different story. Uber, compromised by teenager. Another day, another breach. Silicon Valley's MFA problem. Behind the scenes, Uber's security division went into forensic overdrive. Every credential, every access token, every cloud connection was re-verified. They pulled logs, cross-referenced timestamps, traced IP addresses through layers of VPNs. And then, in one of those coincidences that only exist in the digital age, investigators noticed a familiar footprint. The same alias Teapot had just claimed responsibility for another breach, this time targeting Rockstar Games, the studio behind Grand Theft Auto. The hacker had bragged online, leaking unfinished footage from the upcoming GTA 6. The posts carried the same writing style, the same tone, the same arrogance. Law enforcement began to close in. In late September 2022, the City of London police made the arrest. A teenager, 17 years old, linked to the Lapsus hacking group, accused of breaching some of the world's most powerful companies, Microsoft, Nvidia, and now Uber. The image stunned the world. Not a dark figure in a hoodie surrounded by monitors, but a kid, calm, expressionless, walking beside detectives through a rainy London street. Uber's internal crisis team watched the footage in disbelief. This was their hacker? This was the person who had humiliated a global tech giant? It was a reminder as old as hacking itself. Power doesn't always come from weapons or wealth. Sometimes, it's just a teenager with Wi-Fi and too much curiosity. If the Uber breach was a headline, Lapsus was the story behind it. A digital rebellion run by teenagers who treated global corporations like toys. Unlike traditional hacker collectives, anonymous, ideological, or profit-driven, Lapsus was something new, something reckless. A movement without rules, guided by adrenaline more than agenda. They didn't hide in encrypted chat rooms. They lived in plain sight. Their operations played out on Telegram, where thousands of followers watched in real time as the group leaked data, mocked victims, and celebrated each hack like a live-streamed performance. Microsoft hacked. Samsung breached. Source code dropping soon. Each post was followed by a mix of emojis, taunts, and hashtags like graffiti sprayed on the digital walls of the internet. To cybersecurity experts, it was chaos. To the kids running it, it was fun. The group's members ranged from 15 to 19 years old. They weren't deep web veterans or nation-state actors. They were smart, fearless, and spectacularly immature, proof that skill without restraint is as dangerous as intent. Their weapon wasn't brute force. It was social engineering, the art of manipulating humans rather than machines. They'd call corporate help desks pretending to be employees. They'd spam MFA prompts until victims gave in. They'd scour LinkedIn for contractors and target them, knowing big companies often had smaller, less secure partners in their supply chain. Lapsus didn't need exploits when they had persistence and nerve. And the most terrifying part? They were winning. In early 2022, before Uber fell, the group had already breached Okta, a company that managed identity verification for thousands of major firms. They infiltrated Nvidia, leaking proprietary data and demanding the company open source its drivers. They broke into Microsoft, gaining access to internal repositories and Azure code. Each attack had the same pattern. Get in through a weak human link. Announce it loudly. Mock the system that claimed to be unbreakable. They weren't after ransom. They wanted chaos and credit. For investigators, this was unprecedented. Traditional cybercriminals disappear after a hack. Lapsus performed their crimes. They taunted security teams on social media, posted selfies, even asked their Telegram followers, "Who should we hack next?" The Uber hacker Teapot fit perfectly into that mold. Arrogant, funny, dangerously bright. His breach wasn't just a stunt, it was an initiation, a way to prove he could play in the same league as the legends who'd taken on Microsoft and won. By the time law enforcement began tracing the group, Lapsus had become a global problem. Members were scattered, the UK, Brazil, Portugal. Some were minors, others barely adults. The arrests came fast and confusing. Another account would reappear online. "We're not gone, just resting." Their hacks slowed, but the message they left behind was impossible to erase. Even the giants of tech can be fooled by a phone call. For the cybersecurity world, Lapsus wasn't just a group, it was a symptom. Proof that in a world of automation and encryption, the weakest point remains the same as it's always been: the human being on the other end of the screen. When the headlines faded and the news cycle moved on, Uber was left with something far more lasting than bad press doubt. The company's internal systems had survived. No customer data was leaked, no drivers lost pay, no credit cards were stolen. On paper, it was a contained incident. But in reality, it was something far worse. A psychological breach. Inside Silicon Valley, engineers whispered a quiet truth that no system is truly secure when humans are involved. Executives held emergency reviews, auditing every vendor, every contractor, every third-party integration. They installed new MFA systems, retrained employees, added more cybersecurity tools. But beneath the policies and firewalls, a different kind of paranoia took hold. Every pop-up notification asking for approval became a tiny moment of dread. Every login attempt was a potential intrusion. The hack had turned everyday routine into suspicion. For Uber, the reputational wound cut deep. It wasn't just the breach, it was the humiliation of being outsmarted by a kid, a teenager who didn't need sophisticated malware, zero-day exploits, or foreign intelligence funding, just persistence and curiosity. When the story hit investors, Uber's stock dipped, analysts questioned the company's security culture, and headlines called it a lesson in human error. But the truth ran deeper. It wasn't just about one company, it was a reflection of the world's new reality. Every major tech firm depends on thousands of smaller ones, contractors, consultants, and third-party tools. Each of those connections is a door, and if even one of those doors has a weak lock, the whole house falls. Cybersecurity professionals called it the supply chain domino effect, the idea that a system is only as strong as its least protected partner. That concept wasn't new, but the Uber breach had given it a face, a 17-year-old face, smirking from a glowing laptop in a London bedroom. After his arrest, Teapot didn't go to a high-security prison or vanish into obscurity. Because of his age, the details of his case remained sealed, but reports indicated he was placed under strict legal supervision. Some insiders said he couldn't touch a computer. Others whispered that he was already being approached by cybersecurity firms offering to redirect his talents. It's the strange irony of the digital age: the same intelligence that terrifies corporations can also save them. Today, some of the world's top ethical hackers started exactly like him: young, restless, and reckless. But what set them apart was a single decision to build, not break. In the months that followed, Uber rebuilt its image, investing heavily in cyber resilience and transparency. The company partnered with security researchers, created bug bounty programs, and published a series of lessons learned. One of the slides from their post-mortem presentation summed it up perfectly. "We don't lose to code, we lose to complacency." The Uber breach wasn't about money. It wasn't about theft. It was a reminder painfully clear that in a world built on trust, all it takes to bring it down is a single click.